I've been recruiting teenagers for the Army for 5 years, but they're not going where I told them, Staff Sergeant Kevin Murphy confided to his wife. Kids who signed up for technical training are being sent to Black Ops units. Families who think their children are stationed in Germany are actually deployed to classified operations in countries we're not supposed to be fighting in. Toledo, Ohio, 2023. Staff Sergeant Kevin Murphy sat in his spotless Army recruiting office, surrounded by posters promising education benefits, technical training, and career opportunities. At 32, he was good at his job, personable, trustworthy, and genuinely committed to helping young people find direction in their lives. His recruiting numbers were excellent. In 5 years, he'd convinced over 200 teenagers to enlist, most from working-class families looking for education and stable careers their parents couldn't afford to provide. But something had been bothering Kevin for months. Kids he'd recruited were disappearing into assignments that didn't match their contracts. Sergeant Murphy. 18-year-old Madison Cole stood in his office doorway, tears streaming down her face. "I need to ask you something about my brother." Kevin recognized her immediately. 6 months earlier, he'd helped Madison's twin brother Tyler enlist as a communications specialist. Tyler was supposed to be at Fort Gordon in Georgia, learning satellite technology and computer systems. "What's wrong, Madison?" "Tyler's been missing for 2 months. The Army told our parents he's on a training exercise in Germany, but—" She pulled out her phone. This came from an encrypted messaging app. It's definitely Tyler. Kevin read the message on her screen. "Madison, if something happens to me, know that I'm not in Germany. I can't tell you where I am, but it's dangerous. Sergeant S.G. Murphy promised me technical training. Instead, I'm doing things that aren't supposed to exist. The unit I'm with isn't on any official roster. Tell Mom and Dad I love them." Kevin's blood ran cold. "Madison, when did you receive this?" 3 days ago. Since then, nothing. The Army says he's fine, but they won't let us talk to him or visit." Madison wiped her eyes. "Sergeant Murphy, you promised us Tyler would be safe. You said communication specialists work behind desks." Kevin stared at the message, his mind racing. Tyler Cole wasn't the first recruit who'd disappeared into assignments that didn't match their enlistment contracts. Over the past year, Kevin had noticed a pattern. His highest-scoring recruits, the ones who'd signed up for technical positions, were being reassigned to units that didn't officially exist. "Madison, I'm going to look into this. Give me 48 hours. That evening, Kevin accessed the Army's personnel database using his recruiting office credentials. What he found made him question everything he'd been told about his job. Tyler Cole's official record showed him stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, assigned to the 2nd Communications Squadron. But when Kevin dug deeper, he found discrepancies. Tyler's pay was being processed through a different accounting code, one used for classified operations. His medical records showed vaccinations for diseases found in Central Africa, not Europe. Kevin pulled up files for other recruits he'd processed in the past year. Sarah Martinez, who'd enlisted for cybersecurity training, was supposedly stationed in South Korea, but her records showed the same African vaccination profile. James Thompson, promised computer programming courses, was officially in Japan, but his personnel file contained security clearances for operations that required plausible deniability. The more Kevin investigated, the more disturbed he became. Dozens of his recruits weren't where the Army claimed they were. Instead, they'd been funneled into black operations units conducting classified missions in countries where the United States wasn't supposed to have military presence. Kevin called his wife, Jennifer, from his car in the recruiting office parking lot. "Jen, I think I've been lying to families for 5 years without knowing it." "What do you mean?" "The kids I recruit aren't getting the jobs I promised them. They're being sent to classified units doing dangerous work that doesn't officially exist." Kevin's voice shook. "Remember the Hernandez family? I told them their son would be learning diesel mechanics in Texas. According to his records, he died in a training accident in Nevada. But Jennifer, the unit that reported his death, doesn't exist." "Kevin, are you sure about this?" I pulled personnel files for every recruit I've processed in the past 2 years. 37 kids are listed as being stationed in safe locations doing technical jobs, but their actual assignments, pay codes, and medical records tell a different story. They're all in Black Ops units. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. If I'm right, I've been unknowingly recruiting teenagers for dangerous classified operations while telling their families they'd be safe. The next morning, Kevin met with his commanding officer, Major Patricia Williams. Williams was a career military officer who'd run the Toledo recruiting station for 3 years. Major, I need to discuss some concerns about recruit assignments. Williams looked up from her paperwork. What kind of concerns? Kevin placed printouts of personnel records on her desk. These recruits were promised technical training positions, but they're being assigned to classified units that aren't consistent with their enlistment contracts. Williams glanced at the documents, her expression unreadable. Sergeant Murphy, military personnel get reassigned based on the needs of the service. That's standard. Ma'am, these aren't reassignments. These kids are being funneled into black operations from the moment they complete basic training. Their families think they're learning computer skills in Germany while they're actually conducting classified missions in countries we're not supposed to be operating in. Williams closed the folder without reading it. Sergeant, you're making serious allegations based on incomplete information. Personnel assignments are above your clearance level. Major, I made promises to these families. I told them their children would be safe. And they are safe. They're serving their country with honor. Williams stood up. Sergeant Murphy, I'm going to give you some advice. Your job is to meet recruiting quotas, not to track the career paths of every soldier you process. Focus on your assigned duties. That night, Kevin couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office, staring at recruiting materials that suddenly felt like lies. Brochures promising education and technical training, posters showing smiling soldiers learning valuable skills, contracts guaranteeing specific job assignments. Jennifer found him there at 2 a.m. You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I have. Jen, what if I've been part of a system that tricks kids into enlisting for dangerous assignments they never agreed to? What are you going to do? Kevin pulled up a secure messaging app on his phone. I'm going to contact some of the families. They deserve to know the truth about where their children really are. Over the next week, Kevin quietly reached out to parents of recruits he'd processed. The conversations were heartbreaking. The Martinez family hadn't heard from their daughter Sarah in 3 months, despite being told she was safely learning cybersecurity in South Korea. The Thompson family had been informed their son James died in a vehicle accident during training, but the circumstances didn't match what Kevin had promised them about his computer programming assignment. Each family had been given the same response when they asked questions. Their children were involved in classified training that prevented regular communication. Kevin realized he had to make a choice. He could continue recruiting teenagers while knowing they might be deceived about their assignments, or he could expose a system that was potentially violating enlistment contracts and putting young soldiers in danger without their families' knowledge. He chose to call investigative journalist Rachel Stevens, who specialized in military accountability stories. Ms. Stevens, I'm a military recruiter, and I have evidence that the Army is systematically deceiving families about where their children are being deployed. 2 months later, Rachel Stevens published a comprehensive investigation titled The Hidden Pipeline: How Military Recruiters Unknowingly Feed Black Operations. The story documented dozens of cases where recruits promised safe technical positions were instead assigned to classified units conducting dangerous missions in undisclosed locations. Congressional hearings were launched. Military families testified about deceptive recruiting practices. Several high-ranking officers were reassigned or forced to retire. Kevin Murphy was quietly transferred out of recruiting and eventually medically discharged after experiencing severe anxiety and depression. But his courage to expose the truth led to new oversight requirements for military recruiting practices and better protection for families seeking information about their children's assignments. In his final interview with investigators, Kevin said, "I became a recruiter because I believed in helping young people serve their country. I never imagined I was helping the military lie to families about what that service would actually involve." Did this story make you question what you've been told about military service and recruitment? Do you believe families have the right to know where their children are really being deployed? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe stories about holding institutions accountable need to be heard, don't forget to follow the Frontline Voices.